Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Hello, welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. We're going to get into many people's favorite topic when it comes to health and fitness, and that is muscle. We're going to deal with what is it, how do we get it, how do we maintain it, what's its makeup, and get into a little bit of that and leave you with some tips on how to maintain muscle, especially the way you want to for your lifestyle. Pablo, I'm going to pick on you. Have you ever heard...
That's what I'm here for, boss.
I'll be surprised about this if you've heard of this, but you ever heard of a dédion à bouton à trait de poids?
Dude owes me $20.
Oh, I figured as much.
No, I have no idea what that is.
I'm going to say it again because I'm sure I've got it wrong, but dédion à bouton à trait par deux. Excuse me, not du part, or par deux.
Oh, that guy.
That guy, exactly.
He owes me $30.
I thought I saw you hanging out with him on the corner the other day. So, no, there's a reason I bring this up. That is actually, believe it or not, that's a car.
Really?
Yeah, it's a car. It has the distinction of being the oldest running car in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, it predates Benz, and Daimler and Benz actually came out with the petrol burning engine. You know, they were the ones that invented that. It actually predates that. It's more like a locomotive than our car, believe it or not. So,
okay.
But what's interesting about it, this thing's still running. I'll leave a little information about it. There's the top speed was 35 miles per hour. It can go 20 miles on a tank of water. Yeah.
Really?
Well, it was like a locomotive.
Wow, okay.
You know, water was important to it, so it could go 20 miles on a tank of water. It's now 135 years old. French car. And a guy bought it and he had to get permission from the French government to actually take this piece out of the country.
Oh, wow.
And he actually sold it a couple of times, whatever, and they put it in some kind of road race where they take old cars and see if they can make a road race and whatever, and it's won it a couple of times or whatever. My point being is that 135 years later, this thing's still running and still working like it should. How's that car still running? Well, I got to think, okay, simple. It's like keeping my truck running. It's well maintained. Also, leaving an engine idle, especially a diesel, it's not good. Not let it just sit. Keep it active. You got to keep some kind of fuel in it, oil, these kind of things. Replace parts that wear out and break. And that pretty well would take care of that car and would tell me why it's still around for 135 years. Okay, Garrett said something about muscle, and now he's gotten into talking about cars. I'll tell you why I'm saying that. What if there was a machine that had the ability to repair itself? And you fuel it, you maintain it, but it had the ability to repair itself. When the dédion à bouton à trait par deux breaks a wheel, it doesn't repair it. You know, we have to get out there and repair it, and I'm sure you can't find parts for the darn thing. But what if there were a machine that actually, it repaired itself?
I think James Cameron made that movie.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, yes.
I'll be back.
That's true. Exactly. Terminator. You're too true. Well, believe it or not, we know one. It will regenerate. This particular machine will regenerate at will if properly fueled, maintained, has regular activity, just like that car. And it will do something else that the car won't do. In fact, no other machine will do. If properly fueled, maintained, regular activity, it can get faster, more powerful, and better when stressed properly. The human body is such a machine. The human body regenerates itself in 10 years. All of the cells in the human body, believe it or not, regenerate themselves in 10 years. All except for, believe it or not, the brain, but that's kind of interesting. Red blood cells regenerate themselves every 4 months. White blood cells, which you handle repair and what have you, they're far more active. They actually regenerate themselves every few days. Bone cells typically regenerate themselves in 10 years. The brain does not regenerate, but it has at least double the lifespan of everything else in the body. I guess you don't have to regenerate it if you got it right the first time, you know. And then muscle regenerates every 10 to 16 years. This is an amazing machine, the body. The human body is quite amazing. It's also why, and one of the points, and one of the reasons I point out that time passing on a calendar doesn't make us degenerate. Now, what's this all got to do with muscle? Well, muscle is an incredible tissue. It is an amazing, I keep using the word amazing, but it is an amazing living tissue. I've known a Pilates instructor, believe it or not, just obsessed with muscles, and I can understand why. It's pretty fascinating. In order to get them stronger, you have to break them down. Just getting into exercise, just getting to the bread and butter of what I do and what those of us that are either personal trainers or physical therapists or occupational therapists, we're all doing basically the same thing. Or if you're exercising on your own, we're doing the same thing. You are trying to break down muscle. You're trying to tear it up. Not completely shred it, but you are trying to tear fibers. And you know this by, if you're doing an exercise, you're lifting weights, you start to burn in the muscle. Fibers start to tear, and you actually feel this burning sensation that basically tells your brain, hey, stop this. This hurts. If you go further, you're going to cause more damage. Quit it. Well, what is happening is you're actually tearing small muscle fibers, very small muscle fibers. You can do this lifting weights. You can do this running. You can do this, believe it or not, gardening, any kind of resistance type exercise. And you do what we call the overload principle. You start putting more stress on the muscle than it's used to handling. You're going to tear muscle fibers. And that burn that you experience is actually a byproduct of the tearing. It's called lactic acid. It is an acid. It literally burns the muscle. And its job is to do exactly that, burn the muscle, send a communication to your brain to say, quit it. Because if you go much further, you're going to tear this muscle. That's what you're doing when you're working out. That's why repetition number 12, 15, or whatever, you start to feel a burn, and therefore you stop exercising. But trainers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, those of us in the field that are involved in exercise or what have you, we're actually strategically tearing muscles. If you go to see a physical therapist and they're trying to get your hip stronger, or they're working on something around your knee, they're going to put you through some exercises, and a lot of people will tell you a lot of those exercises hurt. When they're trying to increase the flexibility in a joint, they're stretching it, they're pulling on it, they're actually tearing muscle fibers. They're doing this to rebuild, to make it stronger. The best way to think about this is to think about my hurricane analogy, which is, I live on the coast. We experience a lot of hurricanes down here. And I've noticed I've been in 3 major hurricanes since I've lived here. I was a child in 69 during Camille, and Frederick in 79, and of course Katrina. We've actually flooded out during Katrina. But something I noticed is that as people built back, they built things stronger. They built things better. They built things to withstand. That's what happens when you do a workout. You actually tear muscle fiber, and your body goes, okay, wait a second. Evidently, that wasn't strong enough. But first thing, we need to fix this damaged area, and we need to fix it back so that if that hurricane happens again, we can handle it. So what ends up happening is you have that burn of the lactic acid, and the next day you start to feel a little bit sore. Sometimes 2 days later, it's a very famous study called DOMS, or delayed onset of muscle soreness. And that soreness that you're feeling is not lactic acid. Many people think that stays in the system and that continues to burn. Actually, lactic acid dissipates between 25 and 30 seconds after a lift, after an exercise. It pretty well goes away. The burn stops. You may be sore, but the burning is stopped. The soreness that you're feeling, believe it or not, is the repair process. The repair process is those white blood cells. Now, I was talking about that earlier, and I told you that white blood cells regenerate every few days. And this is one of the reasons why. They have a huge job. They control your immune system. They actually are the worker bees in your immune system. And they're also the worker bees in building muscle. Those are a lot like the same thing. Your immune system, when you're trying to heal from a disease, is the exact same system that is used to build muscle. Why? Well, simple. You've got damage there. You've got something that's hurt, that's broken, that's affected, and it needs to be healed, just like when you're sick. And so these white blood cells come in and start to heal and take care of the muscle. And what is actually happening there, you've got sliding filament theory, you've got all kinds of theories. I don't want to bore you with all that. Think about this. Think about punching your hand through a sheetrock wall. And if you punch your hand through it, you've got a hole there, but you've got this paper, you've got some rough edges or whatever. Well, you can't just start throwing spackle up there. You got to clean up those rough edges, tear those little pieces of paper out of the way. You got to sand it down a little bit. Then you put spackle and you sand it. Well, that's what your white blood cells are doing. They're pulling those fibers apart. They're trying to build new fibers. And that is the soreness that you feel. It's the construction crew doing work on the muscle to help it heal. And a lot of people think that you should stretch during that time or you should move the muscle. Believe it or not, if you can keep it still or if you can increase circulation, that's the best thing to do. You want to increase circulation because if you're increasing circulation, you're actually throwing more white blood cells in that area, you're actually helping the repair process. So that's basically how you build muscle. Even simply moving joints through a range of motion can break down muscle fibers and cause you to get stronger. I'll bring this up because, again, I'm pulling physical therapists and occupational therapists into this because they're doing the exact same thing. As a trainer, we are strategically breaking down certain muscle groups, and it's not just single muscles, but also complex muscle groups. When you're doing bench press, believe it or not, that's a complex muscle group. That's a complex muscle exercise. A bicep curl is a simple exercise. More complex involves a different variety of muscles. In the bench press, you're activating the pectoralis major, the chest muscle. You're firing the deltoid group, which is in the shoulders. And you're also engaging the triceps. And 3 different muscle groups involved in breaking down in order to get stronger. I talk a lot about the breaking down process because that's what a lot of us focus on. In fact, something I've noticed about my real go-getters, my clients that are extremely successful in pretty much everything they do. I have this up and down the age scale, definitely. And I have it a lot. I notice it in many of my senior clients who have been through hard times. They either saw the depression or some effects of that. They were raised by depressing children. And therefore, they're the ones that came up with when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And when in doubt, you work. And you want to fix something, you get to work and you fix it. Well, it doesn't really work in exercise, believe it or not. At least part of it can be damaging in exercise because many of these individuals think that, well, if I work out today, I should work out tomorrow, work out the next day, and work out the next day. Don't take any rest. If they're sick or they're feeling bad, they want to work. They want to do like a Lou Gehrig, a fantastic baseball player. But something that Lou Gehrig did when he had that disease and really didn't realize that he wouldn't perform well, so he would go out and punish his body. He would let himself run till he dropped. He would run bases. He would hit until he dropped, whatever. He would punish his body. And that's that same mindset. If something's not working, I'm going to work it to death. And people can do that and end up causing damage because there is a way to break down and go too far. There's a way to actually go backwards. You have probably experienced this. You've probably experienced muscle tears or muscle pulls or strains. Let me tell you the difference between those. The muscle strain or pull, we refer to as a strain. Most people know of it as a pull, and actually torn muscle. A pull or a strain is actually an overstretching of the muscle. It's slight tearing, but it's just an overstretching of it. It ends up like a rubber band. You lay it in the sun for a long time, and then you go and pull the thing does not snap back. And that's kind of what you've done with your muscle. A tear is when you actually tear so many fibers, you've got a cut in the muscle. And you can tear a muscle in half. I've seen athletes do this where they literally rip a calf or tear a hamstring in a race. Very famous video of that, of the Olympian that tore his hamstring, and his father came out and helped him finish the 220, I believe, was what he was running. So do you know that one, Papa?
I don't know that one. The one that pops to mind is the WWE wrestler Triple H.
Yes.
When he tore his quad.
Ooh, wow, yeah.
Clear off the bone, and
yeah.
they caught it on video, and it was at just the right angle. You actually saw it run down his
leg. Exactly.
It was horrific.
I'm sure.
But he finished the match.
Oh, well, that's what's important, though. I mean, when you exercise too much, you can easily do that. And it doesn't take as much stretch as you might think. If you're like one of these individuals, I told you that when in doubt work, and they don't take time off, continuous strain on the muscle, continuous tearing, when you don't allow the muscle to repair, you'll rip the muscle. Something to be careful with. Something not I see a whole lot, but it's something to know about and understand. Fully separating those fibers and high inflammation, watch out. You may have a problem there. Breaking down is all part of it. The second part of actually building muscle, working on muscle, or how muscle works, is the repair process, which I mentioned earlier. But where we actually grow is not in the gym. It's in the rest period. You're working pretty hard when you're resting. I know a lot of people are very glad to hear that. Glad to hear that you rest, and that's when you're really doing a lot of work. Some people may have dropped the phone on that one. In your rest, your body's actually doing all the repair. That's when the white blood cells are working. And you want to make sure that you take plenty of time off from a workout in order for the muscles to repair, just so you don't go into that damaging muscles or have a hurricane hit every single day. You'll never build back. I use what I call the 72-hour rule on that. Now, there's several theories about this. There's different theories about how long it actually takes the body to repair. And there's a lot of depending factors in it. Now, just like people, the answer that people can't give me on aging, they say that aging actually causes a lot of damage. But then you ask, at what age do these things happen? And nobody can really tell you, because it depends on people's ability, it depends on people's strength, depends on what kind of exercises they were doing. The rest time has a lot to do with that also. But good rule of thumb is 72 hours. You want to make sure that you're clearly out of that soreness area prior to starting to break down muscle tissue again. It can be different to different people, and if you want to hit it, you want to hit the same exercise again, you want to start making those changes again, well, then, check your soreness. I'm not saying check your toughness now. I'm not saying, hey, look, I'm sore, but I feel okay, I can just go ahead. That's not what I'm talking about. Check your soreness. See if you actually have some soreness. Move through a range of motion with the muscle. If you have no soreness there, you're probably okay to go ahead and start breaking it down. I wouldn't do it any faster than 48 hours, but here's the good news. They're spending a lot of research now on recovery time, and they're spending a lot of research on rest and recovery, as in they know that increasing circulation can stimulate recovery. When you go to a PT office and you have e-stim done to a leg where they're actually firing the muscle through electronic stimulation or ultrasound or these kind of things, that they're actually increasing circulation to that area and therefore helping to speed recovery. And there's lots of studies going on right now. Some of them are inconclusive at the moment. But I predict that since we can affect it, we can actually speed the rest time speed the recovery process due to stimulating circulation. I see a day, hopefully in the not too distant future, where you can break down a muscle tissue and within 24 hours, maybe faster, you can actually break it down again. And so you can actually see improvements, strength improvements a lot faster, and therefore fat loss a lot faster. Everything that comes along with strength training, you can actually see a lot faster, and strictly because of spending time not on the breaking down phase, but on the rest and recovery phase. Now, there's another huge factor of the recovery process. With nutrition, it's easier than you think, and that is eating. That is eating to grow stronger. There are different types of protein intake recommendations. And now, why am I saying protein? Well, protein's important for building muscle. It is the building blocks of muscle. Amino acids, if you want to break it down farther, are really the building blocks. But protein is your source for building muscle. If you don't have enough protein, you're not going to build muscle, period. And if you don't have the right amino acids, I'm getting careful about this because I don't want to step on toes of vegetarians and what have you. There's nothing wrong with following a program like that if you understand what nutrient needs that your body has. And one of them is an amino acid that is not located in plant sources. It's located in animal sources. It's located in supplementation also. But you've got to have all those right building blocks in order to build muscle. So the amount of protein is very important, and so is the caloric intake. Now, we're going to get a little more into protein intake in just a minute because there's several different theories on that. But you need to have enough calories. In fact, you need to have enough calories before you think about protein. The reason I say that is that if you don't have enough calories to answer the caloric needs of your body as far as energy expenditure is concerned, if you don't have enough calories in there to keep this body moving, then your body's going to use those calories for energy, period. I talked about that in metabolism. I also talk about that in the fat podcast. You can check those out. So if you have enough calories and then you have calories and the protein, then it will use the protein to actually build muscle. And you need calories or energy to actually synthesize protein. In order to make that muscle grow, or actually make that protein synthesized, you've got to have the calories. A reminder for you really quick here. Everybody knows what this sound is. That's taking in water. I want you to stay hydrated, folks. You'll hear that in probably almost every single podcast I do. You'll definitely hear me drinking water, but you'll hear me talk about hydration and how important it is for your entire body. It's also involved in muscle development, so when I'm drinking, I want you taking some water in also. Back to eating to grow stronger. Now, the third part of eating to grow stronger, besides the protein intake and caloric balance, is timing. There's a lot of theories on this, and I could spend copious amounts of hours of talking about the different studies that have been done on intermittent fasting, studies that have been done on taking the 75% of your protein requirements in early in the day and the results they have from that. A lot of those studies, believe it or not, were done on sedentary people. I'm sure I'm going to get plenty of calls about this that say that, wow, intermittent fasting, the keto diet works a certain way. Look, what I'm talking about is a basic rule of thumb. Let's keep it simple. The best way to go about this and to make sure that you're not going to miss your protein intake and do it correctly is every meal, every day. Now, something I talk a lot about, and I talk about aging and the lie of the fact that we decline as we age. But that's one of the first signs of why people become quote-unquote frail, is that as our lifestyles change and kids leave the home, we're not as busy anymore, we're not having the people to take care of in our household, we start doing simple things, especially when it comes to food. I just have a salad. I would just grab some fruit or maybe eat some cereal tonight. And the first thing to go from a normal diet is protein. Why? It is the hardest thing to maintain of all the different foods. You got to keep it refrigerated. It's more expensive. Takes longer to prepare. Therefore, it's one of the first things we ditch from our diet. And which is why you see people when time passes on the calendar, lifestyle change, they start looking frail. People think it has something to do with age. It doesn't. It has to do with protein intake. But back to what I was saying, every meal, every day. And the reason I say every meal, every day is that your body can only synthesize so much protein at one time. And don't get too concerned about it, but if you break up your protein, typically a 1 gram per body weight per day for an average male and 0.8 grams per body weight per day per female. So you're looking for a sedentary male, you're looking for somewhere around, well, it depends on their weight, but 100 to 140 grams or whatever. Sedentary now, you need less than that, but I would err on the caution and taking a little bit more. But divide that by 3, or if you eat 5 meals a day or 6 meals a day, then divide it by 6 and make an even amount there. And err on the side of a little bit more. Typically, I won't tell you that. I'll tell you to control your calories and what have you. And I still mean control your calories. But if it's protein, err on the side of a little bit more. And the reason being is that your body's not going to hang on to any protein. It's going to excrete it. It's like when people say take a multivitamin, a lot of times you're making very expensive urine. Well, the one thing you are doing with that is you're actually filling in blanks and your body's getting rid of what you don't need. The protein does the exact same thing. Err on the side of a little bit more in every meal, every day. Now, something I want you to know before we leave the topic of muscle, and that is another myth. Well, Garrett's talking about fitness, and therefore he brought up a myth. Well, I know you're surprised by that. If you've listened to my other podcasts, I'll usually bring up a lot of myths of fitness and nutrition. One of the biggest myths in dealing with muscle is that we tend to lose muscle as we age. Yet some more water. Wonderful stuff. That's not true. It's not because time passes on the calendar. In fact, my hero, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, proved years ago that you can regrow muscle at any age. The Cooper Research Facility has repeated that study for people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even over 100. I know that was back in the 90s when he did the study of people that were over 100. And he proved that you can regrow muscle at any age. So don't think for a second that you can't maintain that muscle and maintain that strength as time passes on the calendar. I talked in the fat podcast. I spoke about the fact that in order to keep fat, you had to maintain it. If you're shocked by that statement, go back and listen to that podcast. You'll hear me talk about that in order to have fat, you literally do have to maintain it. People think that you don't have to do anything, but yeah, actually you do. You're actively doing it even though you may not know it. Muscle, I think everybody knows this, but I hope you know that you do have to maintain it. Why? Well, your body's an extremely smart machine. If you don't need something, it's going to pretty much deteriorate it and get rid of it. For instance, you go into a gym and you do some shoulder exercises and you start lifting, you're working on the deltoids, you're doing some overhead presses, maybe trying to hit the traps, a little upright row action, lateral raises, these kind of things. You get a good pump going on. You break down some muscle tissue in your body, you fuel it right, you rest it right, and you start to actually get stronger, get bigger shoulders or stronger shoulders for that matter. Let's say you take a few weeks off of shoulder work. Let's say you take more than a couple of weeks off of it. Well, what's going to happen in your body is your body's going to say, you know what? We built all this strength up for that shoulder hurricane that hit us a few weeks ago, and haven't seen any shoulder hurricanes coming through here for a while. And we got all that nice, healthy shoulder muscles up there that we just built, and we're needing some ready energy. And that muscle, unlike that fat takes a long time to burn. It burns like a log. But that healthy muscle, boy, that stuff burns like toilet paper. Let's go ahead and break that down. Let's use it for energy. And that's exactly what your body does. It's called atrophy. The initial stages of atrophy begin 72 hours after a workout because basically the repair process is done. And so if you're going to have atrophy start, if you don't work out the muscle, you're going to have it begin then. Now, you don't lose it automatically. A lot of people think, gosh, you lose it so fast. Well, actually, it takes a couple, 3 weeks even to start to really see big signs of atrophy. But it does start. The initial stages are 72 hours after a workout. So you do have to maintain it. That's the reason you have to maintain it. But actually, once you get built up to a certain level, if you maintain your resistance, maybe vary the exercise a little bit, but if you maintain your resistance, you don't increase it on frequency, intensity, or time, but you maintain it, you can actually keep that same level of muscle. And if that's strong enough for you, fantastic. You want to get it higher? Break it down and go a little bit higher. I'll speak about that a little more when we get into exercise podcasts. Let's talk about the overload principle and the different things you need to change to actually make changes in your program. I hope I've answered any questions you have on that. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact me, either phone, Twitter, email, any of that. Love to hear from you. I'm Garrett Williamson. Remember, stay hydrated.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.